Hello, I am Adriana, and I'm going to share with you how to have meaningful recreation and leisure in your life, and tips and tricks on how to cultivate your moments. Hello, so I'm Adriana. I am the host of Cultivate the Moments, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about recreation and leisure and the difference between those two. Often they get clumped together, so we're going to debunk how that shouldn't be the case. And at the very end, I'll be giving a recommendation as I do every podcast/video. This time it's going to be an app. Previously to this past year, I kind of myself clumped recreation and leisure into one somewhat. I had taken recreation and leisure studies before, so I knew a little bit between the difference, but not as much as I know now. This thought and idea really was brought to my attention at a recreation therapy assistant conference just before everything happened for this global crisis. Let's dive into what recreation is first. Like I said before, recreation is structured activities, and it's structured in the sense that there is some form of purpose to it extrinsically. So instead of us just wanting to do it for the better of ourselves, it has to bring some kind of enjoyment or happiness, or there has to be some kind of reward. Say if you are learning how to play the guitar, and Human Kinetics explained it really well, and I'll link below to explain recreation and leisure and the topics that I'm talking about. They explain the activity performed is less important than the reasons performing the activity. It's the outcome. It's the outcome you're looking for in recreation. Some examples of recreation are gym, sports teams, games. It's very hard to decipher between recreation and leisure in every activity because it's dependent on the individual. For one person, biking might be a leisure. For myself, I know I like to leisurely go for a bike ride. I don't really want anything out of it other than it's something I enjoy doing. Maybe I do get that physical benefit out of it, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for. Whereas, say, someone who does triathlons, they are looking to better themselves through biking. When we talk about leisure, we talk about this unstructured time, this free time. And there's 3 different sections that you can talk about as Human Kinetics explains it. So first being leisure as time, and then the second being leisure as an activity, and then leisure as a state of mind. So I'll work through these to explain them a little bit deeper. When we think of leisurely time, we think of free time. There's no obligations, and there's also no commitment. They go on to explain this as residual time, so leftover time. And it's not leftover time to clean the house or do some kind of task. It's leftover time to do something that's your preference. When we move into leisure activities, it talks about engaging in activities during our free time, and also these activities being something that are either relaxing, potentially competitive, and then also have a potential for growth. These leisure activities, like I explained before, are very individualized to your own self because it depends on your interest, your hobbies. For someone, leisure could be, oh, I have this free time, I'm gonna go for a hike. Or it could be, I'm gonna read. And then the last point is leisure as a state of mind. So when they talk about leisure as a state of mind, they talk about having perceived freedom, having that choice, being intrinsically motivated, so motivated for yourself, not thinking of that extrinsic reward, some perceived competence in it, and then also having a positive effect. Some leisure activities in a nutshell that may not be leisure activities for you, but for some they might be. This could include reading a book, maybe painting. It's some form of unstructured time. When you think of structured and unstructured, you can think of on Thursday from 8 till 9, I go to a yoga class. That's a very structured recreation activity. Whereas leisure is unstructured. So at this point now, you might be saying, oh, I already know I do barely any recreation and I only do leisure, or the other way around. And it really should be a balancing effect because there are benefits to both structured and unstructured recreation and leisure. We can think of these structured activities as a repetition and a form of routine. And with leisure, it's something that we do in our free time, maybe to relax or settle in after a long day. I truly feel that there is a time and a place for both, and both of them are mutually important. And scheduling for these times, making sure that you do have maybe some structured activities in there. Right now, our current worldly situation, there's probably a lack of structured time for recreation in many of your lives. So I invite you to make some structure on your own. Maybe you can't go to the gym. Maybe instead you set out a time for doing a activity. So say maybe you want to do yoga and you set out a time to do yoga daily, weekly, whatever meets your needs. And creating some structure to that, setting a time for it. And then also noticing that your leisure lifestyle, seeing what activities are meaningful to you and what activities you may not be as interested in anymore, and maybe activities that you want to try. We often, for myself, get in a loop of continuing to do the same activities that we're used to, and I invite you guys to try a new activity. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to take up all these 5 different instruments and then also take up painting. It just means trying one new activity at a time. And I know for myself, it can be scary as a beginner, and just validating yourself and saying it's okay to be a beginner. We all have to start somewhere. And maybe that activity you don't like. And also, maybe that activity you really like and you find a lot of fulfillment out of. To go back to scheduling these different activities, like I said, setting out a time for structured activities for recreation, especially during these times where maybe in our lives there isn't much structure and we need more structure in our lives. For leisure, instead of necessarily putting, okay, that night I'm going to have a self-care night, it's going to be so good, maybe just saying free time. And at that moment, deciding what activity would be best suited for you at that time, what activity meets your needs. Maybe instead you want to go for a walk because you feel like you've been sitting all day and you don't want to sit for the rest of the evening. It just all is individualized to you. And with just giving it a free time title, this isn't restricting you to anything. Recreation and leisure, the beauty of it is it isn't restricted to one thing. You can get so many benefits and look at different things to work on with many different activities. The last thing I'm going to talk about in regards to recreation and leisure, and also how to structure that time and look for those meaningful activities and picking them. Looking at, like I mentioned last week, your domains of wellness and recognizing what things you might want to add more activities on. To refresh everyone, I'm going to talk about 7 now. Before I mentioned PECs, so that's physical, emotional, cognitive, social, spiritual, and sensory wellness or well-being. And then the last one that I also want to include is occupational. And I'll put a link below. It'll explain really well that occupational, it's only a component for work. It's not just that, it can be personal development as well. I'll put the links below for both so that you guys can have a better understanding of the domains of wellness. But with this, looking at all of your activities you're doing, making sure that you're living a very fulfilled and meaningful recreation lifestyle while also contributing to these different domains so that you can better your wellness. Lastly, as I do every week, I'm going to recommend to you guys. This week, it's an app. It's called Let's Meditate. I'll put a photo here. To explain a bit about Let's Meditate, it's just a meditation app. The nice thing is it's free for 1. For 2, there's no ads at all, which is really nice. Honestly, a relief in the apps nowadays. And also, you can download them. So say if you're going on a camping trip or a road trip, you don't have to use your data. You can just download it and have it there when necessary. Lately, I've definitely been taking a lot more time to focus on myself, noticing that in these meditations, my posture changes. I am able to expand, get in tune with what I'm thinking about. For myself, I'm still a newbie at meditating, so I can't meditate out a guided meditation session as my mind goes everywhere. It doesn't know where to think about, and it takes a lot to bring it back to myself. So with these guided meditations, just like Let's Meditate app, they allow you to explore how you're feeling and what's going on in your mind by bringing you back and they also validate and make you feel really warm and cozy inside by explaining that it's okay whatever you're feeling right now and what's coming up. I highly recommend it. I'll leave the links below. So without further ado, I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you guys next Friday. Thank you for letting me share some ways to cultivate your moments.